For all these reasons, which are set out more fully in the judgment, the Court unanimously concludes that the proposed bill does relate to reserved matters. Accordingly, in the absence of any modification of the definition of reserved matters by an order in Council under Section 30 of the Scotland Act or otherwise, the Scottish Parliament does not have the power to legislate for a referendum on Scottish independence. The Court will now adjourn.
Good morning. You are watching GB News. I am Bev Turner. We've just been watching an historic moment unravelling there. That was Lord Reid making a decision on whether Scotland should be allowed an independence referendum or not, without the permission of Westminster, of course. Tom Harwood, what did you make of that?
Well, that was a fascinating summary there from Lord Reid, the Lord President of the Supreme Court, and it did show a unanimous decision from all of the justices on the Supreme Court, confirming what the UK government has been arguing throughout this process, that the Constitution is a reserved power of Westminster. That the devolved Parliament of Holyrood can legislate in the areas that have been devolved to it, but in the areas that are reserved for Westminster, it cannot demand, it cannot grab more power, and no area is that more pertinent than in the area of the Constitution, in what constitutes our country. There were also some fascinating tidbits in terms of where the scope of the decision could be decided, particularly whether this question could be asked at all. Lord Reid said that it could. There was a legitimate question to be asked there of the Supreme Court, but of course a decisive answer there in favour of the United Kingdom. Also a very fascinating tidbit in terms of one of the arguments of the SNP throughout this case, resting on a case that was heard in Quebec many years ago about whether or not self-determination, that principle of international law, would apply. That only applies to oppressed peoples and to colonies, and the Supreme Court there pretty clear that Scotland is not a colony. That might rile up some cybernat discourse, but it was pretty clear there. This is a civilised democratic nation, and the result there from the Supreme Court could not have been clearer.
Absolutely. I think we're going to go to Olivia Utley now for a reaction. Olivia is in Scotland. It's been a very divisive process, this, Olivia. We were all on the edge of our seats this morning to see what the result of this would be. What are your thoughts there from north of the border?
Well, absolutely. What a build-up that was. I mean, as Tom says, in some respects, it's a very decisive win for the UK government. On the other hand, what the UK government really wanted, of the three outcomes, i.e. a UK government win, a Scottish win and an indecisive result, was the third option, an indecisive result. Because if the Supreme Court had ruled that it couldn't rule either way on the matter because it was out of the scope of the Supreme Court, that would make it very, very difficult for the Scottish government to complain that there was some sort of constitutional roadblock to Scottish independence. As it is, with this decisive UK government victory, it could end up being a bit of a Pyrrhic victory, because you've then got Nicola Sturgeon saying the Supreme Court in London and the British government is stopping the Scottish people have a say over their own independence. The SNP has won election after election, and there is a clear mandate for independence. This is a constitutional roadblock to Scottish democracy. Her hope is that if she makes that argument, she'll get a wave of public support behind her from people who perhaps wouldn't have supported independence, but feel as though this is a decision which has been imposed on them by London. So, yes, it's a victory for the UK government, but I can see a bunch of Scottish nationalist supporters with their blue and white flags here, and actually this morning they don't look too unhappy. They think that this isn't the end of the road, and it's very hard to see how the UK government could now put this issue to bed. So it won't be all smiles in Westminster this morning.
Absolutely. And as we know, Nicola Sturgeon is not one to take no for an answer particularly easily. No doubt she will be hurriedly working out what their options are. I believe that we're going to hear from Suella Braverman this morning at some point. She's going to make a statement about this. She's going to give evidence to a Commons Home Affairs Committee this morning. We've also got PMQs, of course, at midday today. No doubt this will be raised there. But for now, at least, those who would like to see the United Kingdom remain united, they can take a sigh of relief at the moment, because obviously there are many more hurdles which have just been put in the way of Nicola Sturgeon if she is going to be able to put that referendum to the Scottish people. Olivia, thank you very much there from a very rainy Scotland.